Guys, welcome back to another video. It's Dinoboy2111 here. Today I'm going to be just discussing, I guess, the problems that are involved in the whole discussion and way Fallout as a whole have set up the Enclave and how they've put them and established them in each of the games, in a sense, because I feel like they haven't really done the justice that I feel this faction can be attributed, and the kind of things they could really push the lore and the boundaries with when dealing with the Enclave. And I just think they could do so much more. They just choose not to, and they just sort of set them up as like the stereotypical bad guy villain archetype, so that they can have the player character along with maybe other factions that are more sort of set up as good guy factions to be the protagonist and like to defeat the Enclave, in a sense. And the closest I feel we've gotten to a point where the Enclave were the funnest and also the most honestly fleshed out, where you could be a part of them, would be Fallout 76, because at least there you get to experience the Enclave. You're not just immediately a enemy, and you get to, in a sense, be a part of them. Not like meet Enclave members, but you get to meet Modus, and you get to take missions, and you get to deal with the nukes, which allows you to basically be a part of the Enclave and get their equipment and stuff, which pretty much none of the other games, except for maybe Fallout 2 and 4, but 4 is just with the new free DLC where you kill Enclave members, and that don't really count because it's more just remnants from Fallout 3 trying to rebuild, in a sense. While Fallout 2, you're just pretending and lying to them to be a member so that you can get their equipment. And while I would say you do get an in-depth look in that game, you're not like exploring a fully fleshed out faction, as they basically just set them up as an evil faction, and they hadn't really fully processed what they were trying to make the Enclave into as a faction. And it just sort of pulls you away, because it should pull you in that this is a new faction and that it's kind of mysterious, and they have these all black suits of advanced power armor, laser and plasma weapons, vertibirds. So you should want, as a character, to experience them or to meet them, but you like don't get to the majority of the time. And I feel like that's the problem, and that's a overarching problem with a lot of the factions, as Bethesda kind of focuses on the Brotherhood of Steel in most cases, and other quote-unquote good guy factions, in order to basically have good versus evil with a whole lot of non-nuance or gray area for you to sort of look into, or to speculate, or to want to look into. And I feel like that's a problem. Fallout as a whole should be looking at the good, the bad, and the evil and the middle ground of things. When you're not able to do that, it kind of takes away from the whole Fallout experience as a whole, and you just kind of are left feeling empty in a way where you're not able to do anything or fully look into these factions and kind of see yourself as maybe being a part of them, or maybe trying to understand the factions, because the games don't give you the ability to see them. Because I feel like each of the games have a somewhat different interpretation of the Enclave, but they just take them and they, like, a lot of the times, especially with Fallout 3, they were the bad guy archetype, but I feel like they had the most potential besides maybe Fallout 2, as they were able to have nuances and good people within the faction. As you had the janitor, you had some soldiers, you had Colonel Autumn, so you had a mini civil war between Colonel Autumn and President Eden, which shows there's nuances. There's not just, it's not a completely bad faction. It's people that want to see their goals, and they think they're good, so they want to see them be taken out in a way. And they want to see these goals be implemented, even if other people might think they aren't good. They think they're in the right doing good. And then you have, in that same faction, bad people, which I feel like New Vegas was the best at doing this, as the remnants in that game, you had a bunch of in between, good, bad, and just old people that wanted to be done, and it showed off the nuances and the complexity of the Enclave, as these are humans that are trying to, in their eyes, bring back America, so why wouldn't they have diverse goals and different outlooks on things? And that's how you should be able to implement a faction and the characters within that faction to best show them off and show to the audience what you're trying to develop and make for your game, and to be able to, in a way, allow your audience to think for themselves about these factions and to come up with their own ideas about the morals, complexities, and the type of goals they're trying to achieve. And New Vegas kind of showed this similarly with the NCR in New Vegas, and I feel like this is how the Enclave should have been shown, as there are good, bad, and morally gray people in the NCR in New Vegas. And that should have been how I feel they showed the Enclave in Fallout 3. Since the Enclave were the main enemies in Fallout 3, it would make the most sense you to develop and show these people as people. They're morally flawed, they make bad decisions, but they're good, and some of them want hope to actually change and bring good ideas to the wasteland, while others might be extremists. You have this wide arrangement of different people with different goals that are all in the same faction, and the way that they implement it is kind of strange, and they don't really do it justice in a way. I feel they kind of don't fully serve it the ability of what it should do as a faction, and they kind of sand it down and generify it into just an evil faction of bad people that want to exterminate everybody. when that was just a subsection within the faction, as not everybody wanted to do that. And it showed with the Enclave Civil War during Fallout 3 that you had good people within that faction that wanted to do good, that wanted to just control the water, but not kill all wastelanders and mutants, but they wanted to actually help people. But they wanted the Enclave to be the ruling power of the region, but not to just take out everybody. While Eden wanted to exterminate all mutants and not Enclave, which shows the moral complexity and sort of moral battleground being played out throughout the game, which I feel they should have gone into even more in depth. And I think in the Broken Steel DLC, they should have really emphasized it. But they just made it into a Call of Duty mission, kind of, to make it just a run and gun sort of DLC, so that you don't really hardly ever get to experience the moral complexities or the good, bad, and ugly of a faction. And they just turn it into a gentrified evil faction of just genocidal maniacs, when that's not what the Enclave is. They might have been that in 2, but they change. And even in 2, there were people that didn't want that solely, but they would have kept their mouth shut because the majority wanted that. And they could have made and shown off by having maybe more characters, such as the janitor and electrician from Fallout 3's Broken Steel DLC, to show how complex of a faction the Enclave can really be when given the ability to, and showing off the faction as a whole, what it can be when it's explored in depth rather than just generifying it into a evil faction, the Brotherhood has to destroy it, the protagonist, you have to destroy it. But that also kind of just comes with Fallout 3 being a more linear game where you have to do these certain points and you can't really diverge from it like you can in New Vegas or 4. And that's kind of the problem, but I feel like even then they could have made it more into something there in Fallout 3's DLC. But I feel like that just might be the talking points of Bethesda at the time, and I don't think they could really understand that. And I hope with the remakes they do, they maybe go in more depth, even if they make it truthful to the original of Fallout 3. I feel like they need to do more with the Enclave to show them off as a faction as a whole, and to show them as being not just bad people, but to show it's a faction of people that have their different goals and ideas that they want to have implemented, and it just depends on how Todd Howard and his whole development team set that up. As I feel Season 2 of the Fallout show did a decent job of showing off the Enclave, and they'll probably become a more bigger threat going into Season 3, but that'll remain to be seen. But it just shows that they're kind of like this always backup evil faction, and they're not really anything else. When I'd argue, at least for me, they're my favorite faction, but they also get the most amount of just not being able to do a lot with. They try to, they don't do a lot with the Enclave, and I feel like that's a big problem that they have to get sorted out, as they're not really able to do a lot when I feel like it's a faction that you can do the most with, and it's one of the factions you can explore the most, and yet, time and time again, they don't really explore it at all, and they just use it as a bad guy faction. And I feel like it just doesn't do the Enclave any favors, and it just makes it a dull faction that I just don't like seeing, even though it's my favorite faction, because they just pull it back into existence as a bad guy faction when it could be a in-depth looked into faction, as a, like, you could have a game where it's two raging factions of the Enclave, one that's like purist and one that's more morally good, like the Enclave mod for New Vegas, similar to that but more in-depth. You could show off the kind of people that would actually be a part of a faction like this without making them all just seem like crazy lunatics, but actually like people that want America back and they want to see their goals achieved without genocide. And it just kind of makes you question, what are they going to do with the Enclave? And it makes you wonder, and it kind of makes me scared for how they'll do the Enclave, as I want to see the Enclave in a more better light and not just big bad guy faction. But it seems like Bethesda just can't really do that currently, and it seems like they time and time again make the Enclave into just big bad Brotherhood of Steel punching bag, when I know they can be more than that. And I just don't know if Bethesda currently has the ability to show that off in the best of light. And that's what scares me the most. I want my faction to do well, and I want them to be shown as more than just bad people. But Bethesda currently, I don't know if they'll have the ability to show the Enclave as more than just bad people, and to be able to show the Enclave in a more mature, nuanced type of way. But it just doesn't give me the best hope, and that's kind of the worrying part. I think the Enclave could be the most coolest faction to look into, besides maybe like besides, I don't even know, besides maybe the Minutemen and like the Nuke World Raiders. I feel like the Enclave could be it'd be better if they just showed the Enclave as a side faction, because I don't know if they'll be able to make them into a good main faction currently, because of how they've implemented the Enclave in the past. And it just is not good of a sign to see that, because I want the Enclave to do good, and I want Todd to be able to show these like moral discussions and like moral disagreements between the faction members, to show it's a faction and not just a one all system. It's not like 1984, everyone agrees on one thing. different people have different goals and they lean on different sides of the spectrum about what and who they want to see. And it just depends, sort of, about how they can show that off, in a way. And it kind of just shows that the current state of the Enclave, I'd say it's good. It's growing, but it could be better. And the implementations of it in the past have made me worried for where it's going to go in the future and where it can possibly go in the future. And I don't know if they can give the most amount of justice and insight and complexity of the faction that it needs and honestly deserves. But I don't know if Bethesda can deliver on that currently. And that's not to discredit Bethesda. I just worry because the faction of the Enclave is not... I'm not entirely certain about it. Because I do want to see more of it, but I also am not entirely sure if it's in the best state of being shown to people without them just hating on it or discarding it as bad guy faction. And I feel like that's how they did with the Raiders in the Pit DLC. They showed them as a nuanced faction. They might have done bad, but they also had good people inside them, and they were a morally complex faction. And I feel like they could have gone more in depth like that with the Enclave to show them as a deep, interesting faction that actually has stuff it wants to do and has grounded goals and things it wants to achieve as a faction. And it just makes me wonder where they're going to take it and how they're going to take it, because it just, you got to have moral complexity as a faction, I feel, or else you're not going to be able to deliver the faction in the best light, because you won't be able to allow people to see good within the faction, as it's just going to be written off as a bad faction or just an evil faction. Now, some might argue the Legion are that, but I feel like even they have the issues of slavery, being sexist, but you get order and no chaos, and you have a strong leadership. You have, good things and bad things that are being shown from a faction, and it kind of just makes the faction have less grounds to change, and it makes the faction less seen as morally gray and just all evil without any room of interpretation or discussion. And I feel like we have to be able to do that. But anyway, thanks for watching. Peace out. Sub, like, and more.